going to look at Penn State and SMU. SMU gets in the field. A lot of people, basically, I think the majority of people thought that they got it right. There's certainly some people that would not like it. But SMU is here in their first year in the ACC, and they are 8.5-point dogs heading to a daytime whiteout. Over-under in this game, 53.5. Chris, by the way, just real quick on the whiteout situation, Penn State knows that they can just make every game a whiteout, or is it a situation where if every game is a whiteout, no game's a whiteout? Is this the whiteout complaining? I've had enough of it, quite frankly.
I do think it's the latter point that
Okay,
if
that's
every
fair.
game is a whiteout, then no game is a whiteout. But yes, also it is a noon whiteout. This is going to be the noon Saturday game, and Clemson, Texas, I believe, is the game
3:30 on Saturday, isn't it?
3:30. Yeah, both those games on TNT, by the way, not ESPN, on TNT, and they'll
That's
be
gonna
going
be
up
weird.
against some pretty big NFL games as well. So it'll be.
Damien, I'm scared to ask this question. Do you happen to remember when Big 12 football was on TBS back in the day?
Very vaguely. Like, we're talking into my, like, before middle school days.
Yeah,
like,
I think
So
I was
you
in college. My favorite moment, Vince Young was playing against Oklahoma State. This game I
Yep,
distinctly
I was
remember on
gonna
TBS.
say, I was going to say the
Yes.
same thing. Yeah.
He's like 10 yards downfield, pump fakes on a linebacker. Linebacker just jumps out of his shoes, and Vince just like runs by him for like 15 more yards. It was incredible. That might be the single
that's the
greatest moment of
legacy.
TBS football. Anyway,
Yes.
we need to get Charles Barkley on the mix. Anyway, this game, it's going to be a fun one. To me, I think you start with Kevin Jennings, SMU's turnover issues. Kevin Jennings conversation we need to have. First couple weeks, Chris and I, there may be some texts out there. We were not Kevin Jennings fans early on in the season.
No.
But the guy that I've seen the last month of this year especially has been unbelievable. Now, obviously he had the turnovers in the Duke game. What was it, 5? He had a fumble and a pick against Clemson. Right now, he's SMU tied for 127th nationally in fumbles with 23, 123rd in fumbles lost, tied for 62nd in turnover margin, the worst turnover margin of all playoff teams. I actually kind of think that that's good because you don't want to have those
Right.
tendencies. But if you are doing that and you are turning the ball over to that degree and you're still here and you didn't lose a game in the ACC, that's kind of amazing. And I think you watch Kevin Jennings. He is slippery, man, and I think he's got a lot of ways to go for his accuracy, his decision making. But he is a fun player to watch.
So remember, Preston Stone was the original starting quarterback. He was a quarterback last year. He was a
3,800
four-star
yards
recruit.
last year. Great player.
Four-star recruit. But late in the year, Preston Stone got hurt. Kevin Jennings came in and played well. And we, all offseason, Sam Kahn, the techspert for The Athletic, kept telling us, he's like, Kevin Jennings is the guy. And we're all like, we don't think he is. We think it's Preston Stone.
What was
Already
his
wrote a
title
story
again, Chris? What was his title again?
Whose title?
Sam's title.
The techspert.
Yeah, we probably should have made note of that.
Yes. And very early on in the season, SMU not playing very well offensively. Eventually, the BYU game, they go to Jennings. It didn't work in that BYU game. But from that point on, it was very, very good. And the thing about the SMU team is that this is a really, really good offense when they're not shooting themselves in the foot. Those turnovers are the problem. They run one of the most up-tempo offenses in the country, and when it is clicking, it's incredible. However, SMU was very much rattled in that first quarter against Clemson. Like the stage, it was too much for them early on. They had to adjust. You see Jennings panics, fumbles. It was a really bad interception that he shouldn't have thrown. SMU, I think, had 2 special teams penalties, 15-yarders when they were punting the ball. And so Clemson, like 4 times in the first half, started drives on SMU side of the field. And so once SMU kind of like chilled out and relaxed, they got going. And Jennings really got going and played much better the rest of the way. Made some incredible throws on that drive that ended up tying the game. That touchdown, that game-tying throw, you guys see that, by the way?
Yeah,
the
on the
arm
sideline.
angle,
It was
the
unbelievable.
arm angle, like unbelievable.
You see
Like,
it with Jennings. Like, I don't know if he can
Yeah.
string it together for 13 games. You know, if our guy Timmy Chalamet, if his his Heisman 2025 prediction will come through, like
Yeah.
it's not the craziest take. Like I could see it. I just don't know that I believe it for 13 games.
Well, I think I
Damien-
said that too, right? I think I said that too.
Maybe
You did,
Or
you
maybe
did.
you're-
Damien
Damien
did.
Harris.
I said Heisman contention. Heisman
Yeah,
contention. at least.
Damien Harris, Timothy
like Klubnik
Chalamet,
level
mind meld.
Heisman contention.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Damien, with the fumbles, How much of it, if you're thinking, don't fumble, don't fumble, don't fumble, is that going to make you more likely to fumble?
Yes, 100%, 1,000,000,000%. Like, you just have to literally flush it. That was my favorite line of when you, especially fumble but had a bad play. You just gotta flush it like a shit or something that you want to get rid of. Like, you gotta flush it and get rid of it. But I will say, SMU scares me. Not in a way of like they can run the table, but two things that scare me, and you both said them. Ubben, you talk about the turnovers, is kind of what we're talking about now. And Chris, you also talking about they look like the moment was too big for them. And those are two things that are really big problems. These turnovers, yes, I understand they're still able to make enough plays to win a lot of games. But whenever we're talking about the end of the season, the postseason, like when you start creating those bad habits, these teams are good enough to beat you whenever you do that. We're not playing Duke. You're not going to get to play Clemson. Well, you could play Clemson again, but there's only one Clemson. Like these other teams are good enough to beat you. Yeah. And to Chris's point, and I said this at the beginning of the year, especially when we were talking about Illinois, they had a big matchup against somebody. I don't really remember, but we were talking about teams who have never been in these positions before, not being ready for these bright lights in this moment. And that's kind of what I see from this SMU team. Like, yeah, they went undefeated in conference play, and they were able to beat a Duke team when they turned the ball over 6 times. But this is a much brighter stage. It's one thing doing that in the regular season and doing that when you're playing for a national championship. So they're good. Again, Kevin Jennings, phenomenal player. I even echoed that he could be in the Heisman conversation. But those are just two things that when I look at this team, they make me scared for them because they do have the talent, offensively and defensively. They have the talent, but you just have to wonder if the stage is too big and if they've created a turnover problem that they're not going to be able to play their way out of.
I think it'll be interesting that
real quick. They're averaging 2 turnovers per game in the last 7. So
not great.
That's a lot.
It ain't good.
The one thing that sticks out for me to SMU is if you look at their schedule and you look at the playoff field, every team that they're going to play, no matter what, is better than any other team that they've played. Exactly. And that's a problem, probably.
And the lights are brighter.
The one thing I want to see is Penn State's running game. Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, love those guys against SMU's rush defense. SMU's been really, really good against the run. The last 3 games, 2.1 yards a carry, no touchdowns, 74 rush yards a game. But Allen and Singleton tore up Oregon. Oregon's defense, average, I would say. 6 explosive runs of longer than 12 yards. They used Drew Allar's legs a little bit too. Chris, how do you see them holding up against Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, that Penn State offense, like, where was that all year against Ohio State in some of the biggest games?
Question.
So, like, what we've seen from Penn State typically, even last year before Koldenicki came in, the OC, against teams that they are more talented than, they move the ball pretty well. Through the air, on the ground. They are able to out-talent a lot of the teams that they play, and they are more talented than SMU. But I will say SMU, for being a team that was in the group of 5 last year, there's a remarkable amount of former 5-star and 4-star talent on this team that came through the transfer portal. Like, Rhett Lashley went huge this past year on offensive line and defensive line. He knew they're like, we got to get more guys. And they did. And the rush defense has been very strong. I think they're 6th nationally in scoring defense. The coordinator, Scott Simmons, really good coach. He's up for the Broyles Award. And so that's where it starts. Can SMU stop the run? Because if Penn State can run the ball, this game's over. I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to play catch up. And if you can't stop the run and Penn State is able to control the ball, especially when you're running a quick tempo offense, that is going to be difficult. But SMU, very good pass rush. They've got, I think, like 15 to 20 sacks in the last 3 games. They got 3 against Clemson. They had 15 in the previous 2 games before that. They blitz a lot, but they have a line that can get after you too. So I'm very curious how that line's going to hold up against Penn State, which is a really good offensive line.
As for the James Franklin conversation, 3-19 against top 10 teams. I believe 1-14 against top 5 teams. Damien, are we going to count this as a win if they beat SMU, who is ranked 10th as a big game for our guy James?
Absolutely not, because they over-talent this team. They should have better coaches than this team. Like, this isn't even a game where James Franklin should feel pressure. Like, obviously, if you lose, you go home, but you are the better team. You've got the better players. And one thing that we haven't even talked about is this Penn State defense, who is absolutely going to try to make Kevin Jennings' life an absolute nightmare. I mean, Abdul Carter, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, Jalen Reed leading the team in tackles and in interceptions. Like, they should be able to control this game very, very easily, and they should win convincingly. So if they win this game, I'm going to look at James Franklin the exact same way as I looked at him before. You beat the teams that you're supposed to, but once it's nut cutting time and it's time to win the big game against a big talented opponent that matches up with you, you can't get it done. And until he beats a team of credibility, which all the respect in the world to SMU, what they've done going from G5 to a Power 4, that's been phenomenal. But this isn't one of the big brands. Like, SMU's name and Penn State's name, they're not on the same level. Penn State needs to beat a team that's on Penn State's level before we start having a different conversation about James Franklin.
I think, Chris, you asked where was that offense. And part of me wonders, you talk to some OCs or you talk to some quarterbacks and they like, hey, we want to score 7 every time we touch the ball. And it seemed like, you look at the way that Penn State has approached games. I think somewhat in the Ohio State game this year, certainly in the Ohio State and Michigan State games last year. It's like, well, if we can score 20, we feel good about our chances to win the game. You knew you weren't going to be able to do that against Oregon. So you open things up. You're way more aggressive. I need somebody to explain to me why it would not be a good idea to open things up and get more aggressive and say, hey, if we turn it over, we turn it over. But we're going to go after it and try to score 40 against Ohio State and against Michigan and against the teams that we're being judged against. I haven't seen them be that aggressive and let Drew Allar, let his legs loose, throw the ball down the field. Like I said, they were bracketing Tyler Warren and they needed guys to make plays around him. The backs made some plays. They were throwing the ball a lot and running a lot more aggressive stuff than we've seen them. So I want to see if they do those kinds of things as well. Damien, what's your pick for this ball game?
So wait, real quick. So what you're saying is they need to chuck it deep?
Chuck it deep. That's right. Yes.
Honestly,
exactly.
I'm not mad at the idea. I think Penn State, especially Andy Kotelnicki, and honestly, swear to God, after I wrapped up my coverage for the Big Ten Championship, I get in the elevator and I just look up Andy Kotelnicki standing right there in the elevator with me. And I wanted to tell him, just open it up, man. Like, just do. Dial it up. Tell Drew Allar, just throw it deep. See if somebody will go get it. Open up some lanes for these running backs to hit some explosive plays, not just gaining 3 and 4 yards between the tackles. Like, no, let's get creative. Like, open it up, get some trick plays in there. Like, just do it, because obviously what you guys are doing isn't like, it's good enough to win you 10 games. I mean, but it's not good enough to do what needs to be done. So just open it up, chuck it. I'm with you, Ubben. But as far as my pick for the game, as much as it burdens me to do this, I'm going to take Penn State because I do think that they're the more talented team. I think they have, when the running backs, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, when they're playing well, I think they have a better offense. I do think they have a much better defense, a better pass rush. They should win. I hope that they don't make me a liar.
I think SMU covers. I think Penn State wins. By the way, Damien, did you get a look at Kotelnicki's calves while you were in the elevator?
Oh, my God. Yes, I did.
I'm so glad you saw them.
Holy hell. David, I swear to God, that might have been the reason why I noticed that it was Andy Kotelnicki, because I'm standing there with a guy, and I'm like, I try to just, keep my head down, it's 1 a.m., 2 a.m., everybody's tired, so I'm just like, whatever. I see this dude's calves, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I just kind of saw his side profile. I was like, oh, shit, that's Andy Kotelnicki. But yes, those things, impressive.
It's unbelievable. Chris, what's your pick in this one?
I think Penn State wins. I think they can score enough points. Again, when they are the more talented team, they usually get it done. I think they'll be able to score. I do wonder how SMU will handle the stage. I think we had a couple of bad SMU turnovers, and they hurt themselves in a big stage and in the cold. The forecast is going to be very cold, right around freezing. Some reports there might be snow showers, some not, but I think that's going to probably put a damper on what an offense that tries to go really quickly and stuff like that. So may not be the best environment going from Dallas, Texas to State College, Pennsylvania in the middle of December and try to run your up-tempo offense.